My daughter, Emma, has always had a knack for befriending the most peculiar kids. She's kind and open-hearted, which I love about her, but sometimes it's landed her in some unsettling situations. One, in particular, has stuck with me over the years. One that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. It happened when Emma was in 3rd grade. We had just moved to a new town for my husband's job, and Emma, ever the social butterfly, had already made a few friends. One girl she spoke about often was named Lily. According to Emma, Lily was a little shy but very sweet, and they'd quickly become close. I first met Lily's mother at a school function. Her name was Claire, and she seemed normal enough. Polite, well-spoken, maybe a bit withdrawn. When I mentioned how often Emma talked about Lily, she smiled and said she was glad. Lily doesn't make friends easily, she admitted. She's unique. I didn't press for details. Every kid is different, and I was just happy Emma had a new friend. But as time went on, little things started to seem off. Emma would come home with strange stories. How Lily sometimes spoke in a whisper, even when no one else was around, or how she'd get distracted mid-conversation, staring at something over Emma's shoulder like she was listening to someone who wasn't there. Then there was the notebook. One night, Emma came home with a small black notebook she said Lily had given her. I flipped through it, expecting doodles or childish notes, but instead, the pages were filled with erratic, almost frantic handwriting. Some of it was nonsense, just strings of words that didn't make sense, but certain phrases were repeated over and over. I am not alone. She is watching. The door must stay closed. I asked Emma if she understood any of it. She just shrugged and said Lily liked to make up stories. I told her to return the notebook the next day, feeling uneasy but unwilling to overreact. The real nightmare began the night Emma had her first sleepover at Lily's house. I dropped her off at Claire's around 6 p.m. Their home was older, with a strange, almost suffocating stillness to it. Claire greeted us warmly but seemed tense, as if she was forcing a smile. "You girls have fun," I said, brushing off my unease. I kissed Emma goodbye and left, telling myself I was just being paranoid. At around midnight, my phone rang. It was Emma. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "Mom," she said, "can you come get me?" My stomach twisted. "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" There was a pause. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, "Lily, she's not alone." I didn't ask any more questions. I grabbed my keys and drove over, trying to keep myself calm. When I arrived, the house was dark except for one dim light in the living room. I knocked, and after a few seconds, Claire opened the door. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Emma was already at the door, clutching her overnight bag. "Let's go," she muttered, pushing past me. I hesitated. Claire looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Lily has night terrors." I didn't believe her, but I nodded, said a quick goodbye, and left with my daughter. The car ride home was silent for the first few minutes. Then Emma took a deep breath. "Mom," she said softly, "Lily talks to someone at night." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "What do you mean?" "She calls her the Mirror Lady." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Who's that?" Emma hesitated. "I don't know. I woke up and Lily wasn't in bed. The bathroom door was open and she was standing in front of the mirror, whispering. I thought she was on the phone, but there wasn't a phone. She just kept saying, 'Yes, I understand.' No, I won't let her leave." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Then she turned around, Emma continued, her voice trembling, and she looked different. Different how? I asked. Emma shook her head. I don't know. Her face was still Lily's, but it was like she wasn't Lily anymore. And then she smiled and said, "She wants to meet you." A lump formed in my throat. Who? The mirror lady. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't explain it, and I didn't want to scare my daughter any more than she already was. So I just said, "You're safe now," and drove faster. The next day, I called Claire. Her voice was hoarse, tired. I told her what Emma had said, expecting her to dismiss it. Instead, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm sorry. I should have warned you." "Warned me about what?" I asked, my pulse quickening. She sighed. "Lily's been different since we moved here. She talks to things that aren't there. She writes things she doesn't remember writing. And the mirror." She trailed off. "What about the mirror?" I pressed. Claire took a shaky breath. "I covered it up once. The next morning, the cloth was gone, and Lily was sitting in front of it, talking to herself. When I asked what she was doing, she just smiled and said, "She doesn't like to be hidden." I swallowed hard. "Who?" Another pause. Then, in a near whisper, she said, "I don't know." I wanted to tell her to get help, to get out of that house, but I didn't. Instead, I just muttered, "Take care," and hung up. Emma never played with Lily again. She never asked to. A few weeks later, Claire and Lily moved without warning. No goodbyes, no forwarding address. Sometimes I think about that night, about what Emma saw, about what might have happened if she had stayed. And sometimes, late at night, when I pass by the bathroom mirror, I swear I hear whispering. I was 11 years old the first time I noticed something was wrong with my dad. He'd always been a quiet man, not unkind, just distant. He worked long hours, came home, ate dinner in silence, and then disappeared into the basement. My mom never questioned it. "That's just how he is," she'd say, as if that was enough of an answer. But one night, I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. A slow, rhythmic clicking, like fingernails tapping against wood. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, but as I sat up, rubbing sleep from my eyes, I realized it was coming from the hallway. I got up, creeping toward my bedroom door. Peering out into the dimly lit corridor, I saw my dad standing there, facing the wall. His back was rigid, arms hanging limply at his sides, but his fingers were moving, tapping against the wall in a slow, deliberate pattern. Tapping woke me up as usual, but this time, when I stepped into the hallway, my dad wasn't alone. There was something standing behind him. A shadow, tall and thin, its shape barely distinguishable in the darkness. It loomed over him, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, like it was whispering into his ear. And my dad, he was responding. Not with words, but with tapping. His fingers moved faster, more erratic, as if he was answering something only he could understand. My breath caught in my throat. The shadow shifted. It didn't move like a person. It stretched, warped, as if it wasn't fully bound by the same rules of space. I stepped backward, my foot hitting the floor with a soft creak. The tapping stopped. My dad turned his head, just a little. Just enough for me to see the corner of his face. His eyes were wide, too wide. But they weren't looking at me. They were looking past me. I ran. I locked my bedroom door and buried myself under the covers, heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I stayed like that until morning. At breakfast, my dad was the same as ever. Normal, but I wasn't. because now I knew. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the one after that. Then, one evening, I found my mom crying in the kitchen. She didn't say why, but I knew. She had noticed it too. And then, a few days later, he was gone. No explanation, no note, just gone. Mom filed a report. The police searched. Nothing. Weeks passed, then months. We moved on the best we could, though I don't think my mom ever truly recovered. And then, a year later, I woke up to a sound I hadn't heard in a long, long time. Click, click, click. I sat up, my skin crawling. The tapping was coming from outside my window. I turned my head slowly, and there he was, standing in the yard, facing my window, his fingers moving against the glass. Click, click, click. His eyes met mine, and he smiled.